If you have just a few Airbnb properties, or maybe even just one, I've got a secret for you. I just got back from Mexico City talking to operators with thousands of listings. There are ways that you can beat the world's biggest operators. In this video, I'm going to give you the 5 ways that you can beat the big boys with just one Airbnb property. I coach thousands of little hosts, guys with 1 or 2 doors, in 40 separate countries, and they've made billions of dollars through my coaching. So please buckle in and let me tell you from the experience of thousands of hosts, the advantages that you have against the big boys. Let's jump in.
Now, these businesses have blind spots. Even though they're better than you in a lot of ways, they built too fast. We're going to take advantage of these blind spots, and blind spot number 1 is that they are too far away from the bottom. This is big. First, housekeepers. They are so far from their housekeeping team that the housekeeping quality starts to erode, and they don't notice these little things. Every big company that I know in the short-term rental space thinks that housekeepers taking photos is enough to manage the business. And yes, it's true. If you have a relationship with your cleaners, them taking photo documentation is all you need, because that's for you, to protect you from the guest. But these big companies with 500 listings are using the same style of documentation, thinking that photos are for them to control housekeeper quality. And it's just not good enough at scale. This video is not to teach you how to run a team of 20 housekeepers and 150 doors. You can DM me if you want to learn that. But what I can tell you is if you have one property, you can, 1, clean yourself with some frequency, and that way you can find out if your housekeepers are skipping things. It doesn't pile up into one big problem where their air filters never get changed or the baseboards never get cleaned. And 2, you can be there when your housekeepers are cleaning. You can build a relationship with these housekeepers where they don't decide to screw you over because you're just some no-name Airbnb investor. Housekeepers disconnect when they find you unrelatable. You have one listing, it's a very romantic notion. Your housekeeper should like you if you have just one door. But in extension to this, when housekeepers are disconnected, you have to deal with theft and shrinkage, and housekeepers are not reporting theft and shrinkage at scale. If you ever have a nice property and has 6 cups and then all of a sudden it has 3 cups because your housekeeper didn't tell you that anybody broke a glass, or you're out of toilet paper, or somebody punched a hole in the closet door, or somebody stole the artwork off the wall in the bedroom, or they broke it and threw it away, all of your silverware starts to disappear, and the housekeepers are not reporting these issues. There's no quality control because these big operators grew too fast, and they grew with assumptions thinking that all this stuff would just get generally managed by the people on the ground, and that's absolutely not true. Even housekeepers that get paid hundreds of dollars per clean won't report these issues if they don't like you. Yeah, it sucks. Sucks to be a big business, and it sucks to suck. And third, this leads to upkeep issues. We're talking about broken front doors, broken locks, low batteries, the pool or the hot tub not getting cleaned. Most big operators, even with 1,000 doors, don't have what I call a deep cleaning schedule. It's like an inspection checklist that's done over time, not every clean. Some big operators, especially those with 4 or 5 bedroom houses, know that you need to have a cleaner clean and then an inspector go behind. There's a lot of risk in a cleaning with 5 bedroom property, but they don't realize that those inspections need to either include every time everything, like checking the air filters, checking the quality of the furniture, making sure that it's all tight and assembled together and not falling apart, checking the quality of the pool every single time, or they need to split up this regular maintenance once a month kind of stuff into a separate document called a deep cleaning schedule. You can name it whatever you want, honestly. So they get caught in the middle. They remove this stuff from the daily workload because it's workload heavy, and housekeepers will fight back and go, we're not going to do that every single time. You have to pay us $30 more per clean. So they remove it, but they never add it in to any other operational cadence to make sure that the air filters are getting changed, that the baseboards don't have scuffs in them, and that the front entranceway isn't scuffed by furniture and that they're painting that over. These huge companies are in massive states of disrepair. If you do not believe me, just go stay at a Sonder in Chicago. It's brutal. So what does this mean for you, my friends? This is the golden era of the individual host because Airbnb killed Superhost. Remember that? Individual listings are scored on individual quality basis, and Sonder can't save their bad listings just by being Sonder anymore. They can't carry Superhost from city to city. And you cannot buy your way into guest favorites. So Sonder can't just buy people out when there's a cleaning issue or people are upset about something. Because guest favorites is not just about the 5-star quality and maintaining 4.8, but it's about not having any issues reported and not having to give guests any refunds. This means that if you ever have a guest report an issue, you need to dispute that the issue was ever valid. Sonder is too busy to dispute issues. They just care about the 5-star review, but if a guest reports that there's an issue with check-in or an issue with cleanliness, they're just going to throw money at the person and not fight Airbnb tooth and nail to get that documentation off their listing. But you can, which means you can be guest favorites, and Sonder, they can die. Maybe one day they will. So now, obviously, I think you're smart enough to know this one. If they're so far away from the housekeeper, they've got to be so far away from the customer too. And that leads to some huge problems. Let's go this way. What happens when big companies lose the relationship with their customer, like through automated phone calls? Like if you'd like to speak to a representative, please press 1 and you scream representative into the phone, that kind of stuff. Guests no longer trust the company to give real feedback. And real feedback is how we improve our business. Airbnb's review system and VRBO and Booking.com, their review system's not good enough. Guests will go, great stay, 4-star. You can't use that, can you? Why was it 4-star if it was a great stay? Or maybe would stay again, 3-star. The problem is that when guests know they're talking to a big company that doesn't care, they're not going to give you the reality of their stay. They're not going to tell you that there was something wrong with the check-in, or there's something wrong with the bed, or they're also not going to tell you if there's anything that you could do better. They say, hey, I really love your space, but I feel like this wall's a little too plain. You've done real good with the photos. I just felt like it wasn't doing it for me when I first arrived. But if you're a small host and you have a relationship with a guest, they'll coach you. One of my favorite things to do is tell a person, hey, you're the very first person to stay at this place. I would love to know what you think about our new space. I'll do that not just for the very first guest, but until there's a review on the account, which gives me about a solid 2 weeks to say, hey, you're the very first guest. You're the first guest. People will tell me what I did right, what I did wrong, what I should change. Big companies, they don't think to do that. This leads also to the perception of the loss of humanity. People over-automate their business with AI. They think if I can automate check-in instructions, the lock changing, if I can automate asking for a review, I can have 200 doors instead of 10, and life is going to be great. But you know what? There's 2 times that you should not automate your business. When somebody is checking in, you absolutely need to have a human available. Because if somebody's trying to check in, code doesn't work, lock breaks, man, they're going to be so pissed. And second, when asking for the review, if you automate asking for a review, it just says this whole time, I never cared about you in the first place. The jig's up. So make sure that you have a human start a conversation to ask for the review. I actually have a hack for this. Watch this video. I'm going to put a little thumbnail up for you. That's how you automate asking for a review. So how can we further use this fact that people are so far away from the housekeepers and the guests, and they're trying to automate everything. They're using AI for shit. They're using automations, and it's so not human. We need to keep hospitality human. That's our biggest advantage. Do stuff that could only work if you were a real live human. Write a handwritten note. Absolutely write a handwritten note. Say, hey, thank you so much for your stay. Have your housekeeper write a handwritten note. I have a friend who actually put up a little portrait card of whatever housekeeper cleaned the home that day. So they'd say your Airbnb was cleaned by Jared or Consuela, and here's a couple of fun facts about them. And they placed the card in there. They did everything that they could do to humanize the stay. And did you know by humanizing the stay, cleaning complaints went down? So where everyone is zigging and trying to automate their business with AI and computers, just be more human. I promise you'll make way more money in 2026. Because if everyone's trying to be a computer and hospitality is about being human, you might be the only one left. The third blind spot I saw a ton here in Mexico City while I spoke this week at Guest Evo. There are huge companies with massive egos. And the problem is that they're too far from the battle. They've won a lot of battles in their day. Going from 1 listing to 5, you can put a feather in your cap for that. 5 to 10, 100, 1,000. It's a lot of feathers in some of these guys' headdresses. But they are no longer at the front line. They're no longer feeling the beatdown of the daily grind of hospitality. And from their little tower, they're telling themselves the reasons why they think that they're a success. And it's more about self-affirming ego. This happens to almost every single business owner. I am rich because I am blank. I am successful because I am blank. And you know what this leads to? It leads to business owners, myself included, launching doors and expanding without looking both ways before crossing the street. Trying to force a product into a market because I'm good at this product and the market's going to take it. You're just going to buy what I'm selling you. And that's not the truth. One time I lost $500,000 on 40 apartments in Katy, Texas because we just did more of the same, but in exactly the wrong place and exactly the wrong time. We had 40 cheaply furnished, hyper-efficient units that could compete on price, but not enough customers. We were just too far away from where everybody needed to be, and we weren't compelling enough for people to want to stay there. The only thing that people would book us for was price. And by the time we shut the building down, I had lost $500,000. Sonder makes mistakes like this all the time. Stay Alfred went out of business for things like this. They would overspend. They spent money on these stupid green chairs and matching green coffee cups. They burned through venture capital so fast that it left investors without confidence when COVID hit. See, Sonder survived COVID, but Stay Alfred did not, because they thought that they could spend their way into branding, do nothing really fancy, and force everybody all over the world to sit in the same stupid green couch. Everywhere they had the same design. And market to market, design needs to change. This is something you may already know. Here in Condesa, Mexico City, we're sitting in a place that is called the Acapulco Boho. And this boho design is mixed with a Latino flair in order to give it this unique look. If Stay Alfred put in their stupid gray couch and green chair here in Mexico City, they would get driven out because tourists don't want that. Tourists want the busy boho, Dia de los Muertos, all that kind of stuff here. But if we go to Greece, people want the big white buildings with the rounded archways and the hand-traveled walls and the blue roof. If Stay Alfred brought their stupid gray chair to Greece, they would have died too. And this is ego pushing into a market. Once you have enough money, you can run on ego. And you don't get the immediate consequence of knowing that you're wrong. And everybody below you says, yes, you're so smart, you're the best business owner ever. And thus this echo chamber ensues. There's a book called Leadership and Self-Perception I think you should read if you think that you were ever prone to buying your own sauce just a little too much. But since you're at the bottom, you can't afford these mistakes. You can't run from the battle. You are in the trenches. Something goes wrong with your one house, you're going to hear about it. If a housekeeper doesn't show up for work, you're going to hear about it. If something gets stolen, you're going to hear about it. If Airbnb's mad at you, you're going to hear about it. But in a bureaucratic environment where there's a customer experience rep and somebody who liaisons for Airbnb, the C-level executives, they don't get all that. They get a little shitty report. And there goes all of the abilities to prioritize the most urgent changes in your company. I made the mistake of thinking that when we were losing a little bit on some properties, that we just needed more scale. I just believed in scale. And instead, we should have looked at the properties that were losing money and cut them and then added more properties based on the ones that were winning. But we didn't do that because I have an ego. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. There is as much forewarning here as there is advice. Because if you do well with your one listing, you'll have the cash to invest, to have 2, and then 5, and then 10. And somewhere along the way, you might want to stroke your own ego because it's about time for that validation that you've always wanted, but you've been behaving your whole life because you don't think you deserve it. And you think as soon as you make enough money, and you have enough properties, enough prestige, that people will have to treat you with that respect that you've always wanted. But that is the time to be the most humble because you are graduating into a new arena of better killers. I got my head taken off a few times going up that ladder, and I'm ready for war at all times now. I'm ready to be honest with myself and shut listings down and not take listings that somebody offers me just because they don't fit our investment plan. We are playing a much more careful game here in 2025. But we also know how to press our advantages. So if you can mix those both, identify your advantages where they are with your customers, how you do so well with one listing, and grow on that, but also recognize where you're just completely off base, disorganized, bad at stuff like accounting, sales, organization, whatever. And be prepared to find somebody else who can run that for you and treat them more than an equal. Treat them like a consultant even. The people who know stuff about the stuff that you don't know, they will also know how important that stuff is that you don't know. It's the punch that you don't see coming that puts you down. So I am predicting in 2026 and 2027, we are going to see the death of some larger operators. Vacasa just merged with Casago. They're calling it a merger, but I'm calling it a takeover. Vacasa was down for pennies on the dollar. I don't think that that's a merger in my book. And we will have more Vacasas and Stay Alfred over the next year. Your goal is just to hang on, take notes, be a good human, and provide good value, and let everybody else die. Yes, this is an industry where other people will go out of business. We have to stop being so polite and nice and soft and utopian. This business has reached an era of being competitive, and every day should be a battle. Everyone who is too soft to fight in that battle should lose. They deserve to lose. They deserve to lose their business. The moment that you're no longer willing to fight for your company is the moment you no longer deserve to run it. And blind spot 3.5, it's almost 4, is they can't see the forest for the individual trees. They can barely see the forest anymore. They have masses of data. And because they have so much data to sift through, they think that the power is in the mass data because they achieved it. There's a bias here. There's a bias that I have scale, and this big data of hundreds of units across tons of cities will give me big, wide insights that no one else can get. I'm the only one with these insights. But have you noticed that the Ritz-Carlton plays the opposite game? The data drills down at the individual level. They want to know everything that they can know about the individual person. What kind of chair do they want to sit in? And if they ask for a ergonomic chair for work, the next time they book a Ritz-Carlton, that ergonomic chair is going to be there. They're winning souls with depth, not breadth of data. And you don't have the broad data. So no matter what you want, no matter how much you think broad data is cool, your hands are tied. But you can be married to the nuance of your data. One individual customer who gives you a really cool edge case, like they behaved with your listing in a way that you thought that they would not, you never thought about it. If a guest gives you a really interesting edge case, like a person who stays in your property wasn't the type of customer that you thought would stay in your property and they had an amazing stay. Let's say they were a videographer, like me staying in some random strangers Airbnb here in Mexico City. We could look at that data and ask ourselves, could there be something here? And then we could test it. I believe in the thesis and testing it. And the moment that you think you're onto something, even as small as it may be, you should test it at a larger scale and see if you're onto something that your competitors don't know. If you look at the movie Moneyball, he did this. He was looking at stats for baseball players that people weren't really getting ranked on, and thus their value wasn't as high, and he was able to pay for cheap baseball players that were really good at the game. He was looking at nuanced data in ways that other people weren't. For example, if you're in a city that has a lot of creators, you can buy a bunch of camera equipment, backdrops, lighting kits, and if you have an empty day on Airbnb, you can list it on Peerspace for photo shoots or videos. If you have a midterm rental business in a smallish town where everybody's not so good anyway, and there's not a lot of traffic from the OTAs, you can start running paid Google ads. Like legitimately. You could start putting on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. You could start doing outbound sales if you wanted to test that out. All you have to do is have a hunch. And all you need is one data point to develop that hunch. And big businesses, because they have so much wide data, they don't get to look at each individual data point for the unique gem that it is. They just want to see 10,000 length of stays jammed together into an average. They want to see 10,000 check-in reports jammed in together into an average. They're looking for trends. And hospitality is not about trends. People are not a trend. People are individual. This is the most powerful thing that you can do as an operator, is to treat every human like an individual. And big companies don't do that. So why are we afraid of the big guys? They're going to do everything wrong anyway. And allow me to finish with one last recommendation. The truth is that when you are on VRBO or Booking.com or Marriott Homes and Villas or Airbnb, your listing is just as equal to any other listing on there. You may only do studio apartments and they're worth $200,000 a year, and somebody does hyperlux. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying everybody has an equal shot to create a good listing. So if you have a studio apartment and 14 other people have studio apartments too, or your mansion versus mansion, the way you create that listing can outperform somebody. There's a lot of marketing, signaling, speaking silently through the photos. And if you want to learn what customers care about most and how to basically hack the Airbnb algorithm, good for 2025, by the way, I've got 2 videos for you. One about the algorithm change, and then one where I spoke at an event in Tennessee about how to be the best listing where 1,000 listings look just like you. Watch that video if you're in a hyper-competitive market, and watch this one if you're a little bit more new, I would say. Thanks for watching this all the way through to the end. Hello from Mexico City, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.